Welcome everyone to BowTieSecurityGuy After Dark. With me today is Eve Vanderpool from K-Force. I wanted to have Eve on to give a perspective from the recruiter's side and also to share a little bit about her story about recruiting, how she got into it. So Eve, on to you.
All right, excellent. Thanks for having me, Rob. So yeah, I'm a recruiter, really client relationship director for Kforce, and I've got a fabulous team beneath me that works tirelessly to find me the best in candidates, consultants, also FTE. But I got into the staffing life about 7 years ago. Previous to that, I was in digital marketing for 13 years. And they kind of reached out to me and said, you're in digital marketing. You kind of understand that intersection of marketing and the business and tech. Come work for us, kind of be nosy and do what you do best and then dig into the client's business and just really get to know them, build relationships and understand how do they make money? How does tech fit into that? How does information security protect that, defend that, right? So I get to do all those things, work with all those teams, and I get to learn about everyone's individual business, which is really the highlight for me is to be nosy for a living. So
Well, I love how you said be nosy for a living because I think that's such an excellent way to put it because it's so important to really understand your clients and what they're looking for. And what I tell people when I'm working with them is like, a lot of people are like, oh, the recruiter's ghosting me, this is happening, that is happening. And I'm like, they don't work for you. As much as we wish they did, they work for the client. They're trying to find the best people. What are some of the things that your team specifically looks for, and how do they identify those kind of diamonds in the rough or those best clients that, may have a really terrible LinkedIn or a real, what are they looking
yeah.
for when they're researching?
So looking for in the client, what I'm looking for in the individual that we're hoping to place with the client. And sometimes they don't have the best LinkedIns, but I'm just trying to understand what you want, not only in this immediate job, but what do you want in, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, because no company really expects you to necessarily stay in the same role for more than like 2, 3 years, right? Like they do expect you to grow, but they're expecting you maybe that you would like to grow with that company, or if that's not, feasible for you, where do you want to go? How can it be equitable for all parties? So I always start by asking like, what's your plan beyond this role? And that'll tell you a lot about how long that, if this role is right for them just for now or is it right for later? And that's fine. There's many different answers. But I also ask the client on the client side, what does that look like for this role? How might that progress? Are you just standing up this team in this practice, be it DevOps, or are you just bringing in security for, the red team right now? Is this how you're standing this up? Because if that's the case, then there is definitely room for the growth. Or is this person just kind of coming in and going to be a cog in the wheel, which some people want, So it's like dating, I'm like trying to find the right match that's going to be something solid and equitable for both. So yeah, those are some of the questions I ask. It's just not simply about the job because everyone can read the job description. You know what that is, right? But I'm asking some things that are just, they're not as tangible, right? So those are the types of questions I dig in and ask with.
What types of things do the customers really look for from a team fit perspective? Is that a large focus for technical people, or are they more looking for the person who knows the most, right? Is what's the market like now? Are they, focusing on which area more, you think?
So I feel like right now it flipped and it used for right after COVID, it was definitely the people searching for the job seeker that had a lot of the power. And now it's kind of flipped because there's been a lot of instability and a little bit of soft, market this year for finding jobs, certainly. And that depends what kind of IT sector you're in, right? Like InfoSec, there's always a little less, but right now people are looking, the client the company is looking for someone who can do a lot of things. They're getting a little getting a little picky because they can be, right? So like I said, it did flip. But one of the things that everyone always looks for is someone who is curious. Because someone who's curious isn't just going to come in and do the job. They're going to go, okay, but like, why are we doing this? Oh, well, who handles that? Oh, how long have they been here? Oh, who do they know? Like, so they're that's kind of what greases the wheels and keeps the products, projects going and tracking, and that curiosity keeps driving people forward, right? Otherwise, it's just a skill set. And at the end of the day, if the person doesn't want to work, or if the person that we fill that role with is just, they've lost kind of the zest for it and the newness is worn off. Someone who's curious will always have that newness because there's always something to learn. So I think clients really appreciate when you ask and come prepared with really good questions. When you show that curiosity, maybe you've got a project on the side, maybe you tinker on the side, maybe you've got like, just some sandbox that you've built up on the side to play in, and they love to hear that. Because it shows that you're that person that's going to go that extra mile, right? You're going to integrate yourself into the project and the work, and you've got a hunger and you've got a drive. It does set you apart when you have that, and you show that you have that by just flat out telling people your projects and asking, hey, is there anything that maybe I didn't mention that you're curious about that might set me apart from others? Because not everything is on the resume, not everything is on the LinkedIn. So just ask the questions, ask some really good, thoughtful questions.
I can't stress that enough, how many people, because I'm going through rounds of hiring right now, right? Where they come to the interview and they haven't even researched the company. They know nothing about the company. Many people on the job where it says, why do you want to work for my company? They said, I want to work for Rob. And I'm like, cool. Um, great, but what have you actually done the research on? For me, I don't ever want to work for a company because of an individual. I want to work for a company because I believe in their message. I believe in what they're doing. And I think what you said there is really, really key, that innate curiosity is what sets people apart. And
Right.
getting really excited. I don't care what you get excited about on an interview, but I want to see something from you. I get it. Look, I'm neurodiverse. I have autism and ADHD. I am not the most verbose person when it comes to my emotions. But what I've learned is those soft skills are incredibly, incredibly important. Have you seen a shift in like soft skills where the client will be like, yeah, I mean, they could do the job, but like, the other guys seem more excited, even though we'd have to teach them more. Like, is that something that's actually, I don't know if that's happening, but I'm just curious. Are they valuing kind of those soft skills over technical in some cases?
Yes, there are, and don't get me wrong, you still have to have the technical chops. You definitely have to have um, that, but they do want to see that if things are all equal or fairly equal within a small margin, they want to see that you have that curiosity. They want to see that you have that eagerness, because that, like, it's an old adage, like that cannot be taught. You can't teach someone how to be eager, to be driven, to be curious to a degree. But, and another thing too is, and I think this can't be overstated, is like, especially if you have a new client, for me, I like to just go in and like listen, and I'll ask some questions like, so what do you do all day? I know what you do. I know what your LinkedIn says you do, but like, I'll ask a manager, so what do you do all day? And that's a very different question than what do you do for this company? And so I like to have people ask that about themselves. Like, Rob, what do you do all day? And your answer might be like, well, I herd cats, I put out fires. And that's actually completely valid, right? But that when someone asks you what you do, think about answering not with, hey, well, I'm a vulnerability manager and I set priority and rating. Like, we know what the textbook is, but you might want to offer and start with something funny, like, well, actually, I prioritize things that people end up ignoring. On with it, you want to bring your personality through, but you want to ask that of yourself, because that answer might actually be a little more accurate than the textbook version, right? And we all know that what our job description is we do a lot more than that, all of us.
I think that's really key is kind of sharing those little anecdotes and also kind of really talking a little deeper into it, but also not rambling on, right? Answering the question kind of clear and concise, and then building up from there, and then taking it kind of to that next level. I always try to say you want to give them an onion to peel. So you want to
Mm.
be able to start talking a little bit about something, but not give too many details because you want to give them the opportunity to dig in. And this also gives you the opportunity as the interviewee to know what question's coming next because you kind of teed it up yourself. So it's always fun. I mean, with the market how it is now, is is there just an abundance of talent? Is it just, everyone thinks, oh, it's super easy to find people. I have not found that to be the case. What are your thoughts on kind of the current market and all the things that are kind of happening within the tech field?
As I said before, it is a little soft. I think there's a lot of instability or insecurity in what's going to happen. I mean, there's many external factors at play. We're coming off a few years where the hiring was just bombastic. It was crazy, it was frantic. And right now we're seeing really just a correction of that, right? And so that correction makes people go, oh, wait, why are we slowing down? Wait, what's happening? The economy has been crazy. There's been inflation, again, external factors. Companies have seen, decreases in revenue. So we're seeing all these things affect the hiring, or people just don't know what's going on, and leaders are just, they're not willing to put a lot out there. They're really trying to be lean. And so that has its own domino effect. And through this election, I think we're seeing a lot of that. I know we certainly have. We did beat earnings this quarter, but previously we were just short. So there's a lot of instability, and I think that makes people hesitant to hire. And so there are people that have been laid off still looking. And there are people that really still want remote work, and a lot of things are hybrid or fully on site. So there's a little bit of reckoning, like, hey, do I just take this other role? Do I not? Do I just wait for the remote? There's got to be something out there. I can't believe it's not remote. So, there's a tug of war between, the client or the hiring company and the candidates that we're seeing on the market.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too. You mentioned remote. Do you see remote jobs coming up less and less? I did a video a while back kind of said remote work is dying. And I feel like a lot of companies are looking to get people back into the office, looking to really understand their people more and their needs more, saying like, oh, we want bodies in house, et cetera, et cetera. What are you seeing from a recruiting perspective as far as remote jobs?
It really depends on the client. Some clients really want people on site for various reasons. A lot of people trot out the collaborative piece, which, yeah, sure, you can collaborate differently in person. I don't know if it's better, it depends on your industry, but you do collaborate differently in person than you do via Teams. But then there's a lot of folks that go in and go, well, I go into the office and I sit there on a Zoom or a Teams call and talking with my team across the country. So I'm not really interacting, in person. I'm really just still interacting through my computer, but at work. So there's a lot of more clients requesting that they come in, but they've also paid for those big buildings. And so I guess that might be a factor in it. A lot of people on their boards may have interest in corporate real estate where they're saying, yeah, get them in. We have investment in you, and get those people in. So there's a lot of that. Again, many different reasons, but we are seeing that candidates are being more flexible with going on site to simply have a job, even though they may not be happy with it. And then there's plenty of people that are saying, yeah, we've got a 5-day week on site or 3-day a week, but perform, let's see how you work. And then, maybe come in 1-2 days a week, right? So there is that little bit of flexibility that's almost that like wink, wink, like, okay, if you prove yourself, you'll be okay. So, I don't think you should assume that going into any job interview, but the flexibility is certainly at play, and that is still very strong.
I think that's really key too, is allowing that flexibility. And then also, I like the kind of perform to play type model where it's like, hey, if you're coming in and you're crushing it, we're just going to simply say that you're good enough and you can go ahead and have those extra privileges most people don't have.
Right.
When your team is looking at things like LinkedIn and trying to identify talent, is there anything key that they're looking at in the profiles or anything to kind of identify maybe a potential person?
So lately I've had a lot of clients because I always send candidates over with a LinkedIn if they have it or a portfolio, but they are looking to see in the digital marketing space at least more portfolios, things like that, where it's a little more creative. But now on the IT side or cyber side, they're looking for affiliations, maybe hackathons, things like that. Again, just showing involvement in the community, which speaks to someone's curiosity, someone building relationships. Um, and that building relationship piece, again, can't be understated because it's really hard to get rid of someone the more you build relationships. Not that it can't happen, it certainly can, but if you've built those relationships and people know your name and you're not just a line on an Excel sheet with your salary or your rate, and someone knows what you do and how involved in the community you are, and they just say, oh yeah, this person strikes me as eager, it's a lot harder to cut you. So if you show that you do those things outside of work and you build those relationships with those associations, whether it be ISA or ISC squared, whatever it is, that's helpful. It really is helpful. It's like you're always interviewing, and even when you have your job, you're always interviewing. Your resume is up to date. You always have these affiliations and you're building those relationships.
I think that's something that I know I personally missed out on because when I got laid off, I didn't even have a LinkedIn, right? I was just like,
Look at
oh,
you now.
yeah, it's ridiculous. Honestly, the whole thing is just hilarious. So I joined LinkedIn because my recruiters were basically like, um, no, like you have to have a LinkedIn. Like people aren't going to believe you're real. On paper, you look real impressive, and when they go to look for your name, you're going to be non-existent. Do you see like a lot of fake resumes come across, or do you meet with people whose resume is just like fully fabricated, where you meet with them and you go, you don't know any of these things. Why did you put them down? Like, does that commonly happen with your team?
Thank you for that question. This is, yes, yes. And we're not the only ones, right? So I talk to other people in recruiting. There's other people that work for other recruiting companies, staffing companies, and we're friends. We talk because at the end of the day, we all have some of the same problems, right? And some of the problems that we're seeing come across our desks are resumes that are just like keyword stuff, like the old SEO when you used to put every word in there that had nothing to do with what you did, or but people do that on their resumes, right? So they'll have touched one platform, one tool, or heard about it, or got a free koozie, or I don't even know, t-shirt from that company. And now all of a sudden they worked with it for years. No, you didn't work with it, but also be clear with what you did with the tool. Were you an admin? Did you engineer it? Did you work on large integrations with it? How much data did you migrate? Whatever it is, right? So that's important because when you speak to it in the detail like that, people understand that you're not BS. That's real. Like you've done this. Okay, this makes sense. Those numbers make sense. But then people will say, they'll throw out impossibly large numbers. And I'm like, well, it would have taken a team to do that in the years that you were there. So just be honest with us that yes, I was part of a team, not and if you led that team, go ahead and say that you led that team. But then if you led that team, how much of the integration were you hands-on for? Be specific about that because that's the natural next question of any hiring manager, right? So yeah, we do see a lot of that. Some of the tools are very sophisticated in how they can put forth fake candidates. So to make yourself stand out, make yourself a real person, speak plainly, have some personality on your LinkedIn. So when we go to put you forward, you're not just your resume on there again, right? There's something they can ask you to validate that and that experience.
That That's a great piece of advice because I always tell my mentees, like, the first thing when someone says, "Hey, can you look at my LinkedIn?" I go, "Cool. If I look at your about section and it says anything about aspiring cybersecurity professional or all of the, like, just stop it." Like everybody says the same thing. Talk about your personality a little bit. I talk about 90s rap and other silly stuff. And somebody once said, "Well, like, aren't you worried?" And I even asked you specifically, I reached
Right.
out and said, like, "I'm thinking about doing the bow tie security guy thing. What do you think about that? Like, is that going to cost me jobs?" And your response, I think, was great. She goes, "Not the right ones."
Yeah,
Right?
that's true. Yeah,
Because it's like an employer filter.
it is.
The people who I don't want to work for are going to be like, "Oh, that guy's too goofy and he's kind of a dork. I don't want him leading my programs." But the right companies will see that as an actual thing. Like I have companies reach out all the time. "Hey, we're looking for like a fun leader who's, you know, energetic, cares about his team. Like you share all those. Can we talk?" And I'm like, "No, I'm totally happy where I am." But it shows that like LinkedIn is your first impression before conversation even happens. And that is the difference a lot of times, unfortunately, between getting a job and not. And that includes your profile photo. As cringe as this may sound, if you do not have a smiling profile photo and you're just kind of like very doom and gloom in your photo and it's
Right.
complete garbage, like people aren't going to take you as serious.
Right.
I
We
have
want to see a
taken,
friendly
yeah,
face. You want to see a
right,
friendly face. Like we're just animalistic at our
yeah.
core. Like that's a scary face. I'm put off. This
Right.
what's
Yeah.
going on with this
It's a
guy?
it's a
Like,
it's a psychological thing, right? If
yeah,
you're mean mugging on there and you've got like a grumpy look on your face, or you're just completely non-emotion in your photo. And I get it. Again, like I said, I'm on the spectrum, so like I'm not very emotional, but I learned, yeah, I've got to smile for these photos. I've got to do these things because there's certain social normalities that I think employers and recruiters both look for. And I think it's now even more than ever because there's so much fake, profiles
yeah,
and fake, people. I've interviewed two people for this job that I have open, basically that were complete lies. And they got past the recruiter because they were able to either chat GPT their way past it or whatever. But when they got to the real technical team, I really laid into them. I was like, "You took a spot from somebody who actually was qualified for this job."
right.
And that happens so often. The last time I hired, out of the 10 candidates that I met with, like 7 of them were just completely falsified and blown up resumes. Like you said, they touched the system. I
Yeah,
love you got a koozie from them. My resume would be 40 pages long.
yeah,
Um, or
right.
socks. I was a big sock guy. Whenever vendors had socks, I was like, "I'm on my way. Let me go see
Yeah, I mean, I have a Sans Yeti from my husband that I took for coffee this morning. Have I taken the CISP? No. But I
Right.
mean, by the transitive properties of this mug, yes, I have. Okay. Uh,
You're, you're like, "I'm gonna just put sands on my
I
resume and
mean,
we're good
you
to
guys,
go."
I'm CISP. Hire me, Rob. Let's go.
Yeah.
You don't want me on your security program. No.
And I think that's just something that people don't realize is that on average, like I wanted to talk a little bit about the day-to-day of a recruiter, how many people they're meeting with, what their day looks like, and kind of to explain some of the delays, like what causes them not to get back to a candidate, what causes them to quote unquote ghost a candidate. Um, can you explain a little bit about what that is and the workload that's on your teams?
So yeah, first of all, no one should be ghosting anyone at all. Either side, everyone's adults. Just if you don't have news, that's also a message, right? So I'll start there, but what I require, and I'll take you through this process, what I require of my clients too, most of the time, 99% of the time, is that they adhere to a process. And between myself and the client, we'll work out this process. And by process, I mean from the time I start searching and I have that call with the client to go, hey, let's go over the role. Let's talk about the intangibles. That's the beginning of the process. And I go through that. I get all of, what they wrote down, and then I ask questions, and then we say, well, what about this scenario? If this person had this experience but didn't have this many years of this work, okay, yes. So we work through that. But then I also have process in terms of hey, let's put a date on the calendar when we're going to either review resumes, or the people that I send over, we're going to block that time and we're going to interview the people you select that I've sent over. Because you're never going to have more time now in this moment than in the future. In the future, you're not going to have more time. You actually end up having less time as you get closer to the date that you need those people. So it makes sense to follow a process. Then I can go back to the people that we are talking to for the role, and I can say, look, there's a date on the calendar to hire. I want you in one of those dates. Please get me an updated resume. Please fix up your LinkedIn. Think of some good questions. I'm going to send you over, after I've qualified them. So there's a lot that it goes through my recruiter, and then it goes to me, because I know the client the best. I know the client better than my recruiters do. And so, like, I have a different filter. I have different questions. So knowing that we have that process, knowing that my clients adhere to a process, that means they're serious about the role. That means that that candidate needs to also take that seriously, right? Like, we have to all have equal investment here. And I'm not going to put a candidate in front of a client if that candidate isn't serious. Like you said, if they're not legitimate, if they're flaking on things, if they're just not prepared. Because once you get that job, that's also me. That's me on the line. I'm telling my client that that was the best I could do for you. No, like, so, and I want everyone to have success. Otherwise, if I put too many people forward like that, then what do I look like? I look like I don't care. And then that's my reputation. So I think, just having a process, having everyone invested and very clear and on the same page takes communication. So no one should ever be ghosting. That's what that tags back to. No one should ever be ghosting. And my recruiters, they're always getting back to people, getting feedback. And that's why when I tell people, just saying passing on the candidate and not telling me why, if that's what you want to do, that's up to you. You're the client, but you're not going to find a good candidate that way. So if you invest as much as you want to, and that will tell me how serious you are. And again, that's on both sides. So the feedback that I get, we do feedback calls with our candidates. What did you think about the employer? What did you think about how they described the role? And then we'll ask the client that too. So everyone's on the same page. We share that information. And so there's no hurt feelings going forward. But when you don't communicate, that either side, client or candidate, that shows me who you are. You're showing me who you are. You've told me who you are, but now you're showing me who you are. And guess what? I believe you when you show me who you are. So if we behave that way and equitable all across the board throughout the process, then I can guarantee you success in that role if you like that person. Like, you're continually showing who you are besides telling people who you are.
I think that makes complete sense. And I try to tell people you are representing that recruiter. Like, so you want to be like the best possible, easiest sell. Like you really like when I started, going for gigs, I sent you my recording of my intro video where I was like, "Hey, this is who I am. Here's what I like to do." And you were like, "Oh my God, everyone should do this." Um,
Yes.
because I was able to showcase my soft skills and kind of a little bit of my personality in a 2.5 minute clip. The recruiter already knows I can talk, I can speak clearly, and I'm articulate, and they can put me in front of someone. So I always say you want to make the recruiter's job as easy as humanly possible. And I'm sure there's a lot of coaching that's done too on your side from what it sounds like,
Yeah.
which is awesome. Because I know I worked with you through a couple candidates that we went through.
Sure.
And the process was great. It was like, hey, here's what to expect, here's what to do. Like, and you set your people up for absolute success, and then it's just on them to deliver. And like you said, they are representing you. And if you continue to kind of put garbage forward or non-qualified candidates, to be a little less kind of
Mhm.
aggressive, they're just
Mhm.
not going to go with you as a recruiting company anymore. They're going to
Right.
say, this staffing company has given us 4 people who've quit in the first 2 weeks, and et cetera, et
Right.
cetera. So, with the job market as kind of weird as it is, are you preparing your client your actual candidates for things like, hey, you're probably not going to be able to negotiate the salary. You're probably not going to be able to do these things. The offer is what the offer is. I was kind of surprised by that myself when I was unemployed. Every candidate's like, hey, here's the offer. And I'm like, hey, that sounds great. How about 10,000 more? And they're like, no, you have 48 hours. And I'm like, oh, okay. Fair enough. But
Or
like, is that something you're seeing commonly where there's a lot less wiggle room than there used to be because the candidate pools are so flush?
There is. I mean, that's just the nature of when there is it's it's like in real estate buyers, sellers, but in this case it's the client having more control in the situation. So naturally right now they're a little more strict with that. But I do think it's fair to ask for certain things, like if they want you to be on site, okay, would you help me out with relocation, or, you know, if it's a role where you're in a managerial capacity, is there a bonus? Or a longevity bonus after 6 months, and if you'd like to keep me on. And so I think those things are, you can definitely ask about that. I certainly ask about it on the behalf of the candidates because there's a respectful way to say that. Like, hey, they were really hoping for this, but they're very interested in the job and obviously flexible. But just want to see, because I think it would be equitable just to ask, and it just makes sense to be upfront about that. But at the end of the day, they're not going to turn you down. Most clients won't turn you down and saying, well, oh, they're just going to leave for more, especially if they're just asking for like 5,000. If they're asking for 30,000 more, yes, they're probably going to leave, depending on the role, right? But if they're just asking like for 5, 10 more, like, you know what, they're probably not going to leave. They genuinely feel like that's what they want. But I, I have those conversations, those relationships with clients. And so I feel comfortable asking that. And again, I think there's a respectful way to ask that. I generally don't work with too many clients that are draconian and like, how dare you ask and speak up for yourself? I mean, I just tend not to work with those people. Again, not everything is for me, not everyone is for me. So,
No, that makes complete sense. And speaking of kind of salaries in general, like, has there been a lot of conversations? Because I know with me working with different mentees, this kind of the reality check of what the salary ranges are currently compared to what they were 2, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I mean, it's a substantial drop in most areas where your senior role for a senior security role would be paying upwards of 180, 190. And now it's 135, 140, if you're lucky.
right.
Has there been a lot of those conversations where people are like, no, 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 I insist on getting this money. And do they then come back and go, all right, maybe I was a little, maybe that's not
That's
an
actually
option.
exactly how it goes, Rob. Honestly, yeah. I mean, it's like anything. It's like you start high, you come in and you're like, oh, I'm insecure. And this is the thing too. And this is like a hot button. I just saw this on LinkedIn. Someone else posted it like, hey, stop telling kids that are coming out of school and there's all these infosec jobs and they're gonna get paid all this money because there's not. I mean, the jobs are there, right? The jobs are needed. There is a need. Now, just because there's a need does not mean all these companies are going to hire for it. They're probably going to take their existing workforce and tire them out, right? Like they are going to tire them out, but there is a need. Again, needs aren't always met. We know that. So, like the rates that people are seeing, that's also not going to be met. People have to accept like you're going to come in less than they were 2 or 3 years ago, just like interest rates weren't what they were 2, 3 years ago, nor was inflation. So things are definitely changing. If you want a job, you come in with do your homework, ask around. What are you actually seeing? I want someone to get the job. So I'm going to be completely honest with you with what I'm seeing and what a good offer today is. I'm not trying to get you in there for less and then have you leave. That's the whole point. Again, like it has to be equitable all the way around. And when you're working with someone, you can get a sense like, have they been in this profession a long time? Have they been in recruiting and staffing a long time? If they have been, then hear them out on it. They've been there for a while because they've built goodwill. They're, straightforward with people. They have integrity. So according to that, I would say, yeah, things are definitely not paying the way they used to. And just come in with a realistic number, but know that, you can always have that conversation again in a year or so, or after a huge project and you've proven yourself.
I think that future negotiation is going to be kind of key. It may not even it may not work out, but the problem I think a lot of people are afraid of when they accept the role is how hard it is to find another. Like if they're not happy, right? So I always tell people you are interviewing the interviewer more than they're interviewing you because you really need to
Right.
know because the odds are you're going to be stuck for lack of anything better unless you are a wealthy billionaire you don't have to work, you just choose to because it's fun. um the reality is like you are going to probably be there for at least 2, 3 years. And that's kind of the end of it. And the odds of finding another opportunity come down to that networking, putting time out there. I think continuing to grow your brand. I see a lot of people, they get the job and then they completely kind of disappear from LinkedIn. Trust me, I had a
Right.
really, really kind of heart to heart with myself when that happened, where I was like, I hated social media to a point where I had no social accounts, and now I'm an influencer, which is still just so stupid to me. I people invite me to their colleges to speak in their businesses because they want to learn about me. The weirdest thing I've experienced as an introvert. But what's interesting is if you continue to grow that brand, the next time you're in that position, you now have a market. You have people
Right.
who know who you are. They know how dedicated you are to security or to whatever field you're in, whether it's, security, IoT, blockchain, whatever. Like they know how dedicated you are and that you've continued to stay engaged even after you were able to score a job. And I think that is the difference. That kind of still giving back, still being part of the community. Like I just did a presentation a few months back with ISC Squared about being laid off and kind of the struggles of that, the mental struggles. That stuff is invaluable not only to other people, but to your career. You're helping yourself and helping others. It's kind of a win-win. And for me, I went from a situation where I had put in maybe 15 resumes and I'm like, this game is rigged. And I think I talked to you. I was like, I'm just going to do everything different and I'm just going to not do anything how anybody else is. And I started to really focus on the networking aspect of it. And people like me, who's a seasoned professional with 20 years of experience at major Fortune 500 companies, were struggling to find even an interview. So the person coming out of college, what chance do they have, right? So, no, I appreciate
Yeah.
your time, Eve. This has been absolutely phenomenal. I love kind of the details and everything that you gave on this. And anyone listening, check out K-Force. They were awesome to me when I was laid off. They've been awesome to my other mentees that I've sent. Eve has been fantastic to work with in many situations over the years. And she was a huge, big reason why BowTieSecurityGuy exists, because I was horrified that I would lose opportunities. And she's like, you're not going to lose the right ones. And that still resonates with me. So thank you so much for your time today, Eve.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it so much. And again, at the end of the day, it's about building relationships. And Rob, we always have fun. So such a pleasure. Thank you.
Indeed. Good luck out there.